All right, well, we're just about at the top of the hour here. And so welcome to those who've already joined us on Facebook. Make sure I'm not, okay, good. And we're starting to pick up some viewers. Welcome everyone to this live stream chat. I'm Eric Scheidler, the Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League, an organization founded in 1980 by my late father, Joe Scheidler, who passed away in January at the age of 93. And he devoted the second half of his life to this cause of being a voice for unborn children. I'm joined by Father Frank Pavone, the Director of Priests for Life, who has a long history of collaboration with my father, with the Pro-Life Action League over the years on many projects. And also by Dr. Monica Migliorino Miller, who has been an activist since the 1970s, runs Citizens for a Pro-Life Society, and is the author of Abandoned, a book that is very relevant to our discussion today, in which she recounts the experience of recovering the corpses of aborted babies from locations all over the place, dumpsters, pathology lab, loading docks, all kinds of places, hospitals, to bury those children with the act of love they deserve, being buried in the ground. If we can do nothing else for them, we acknowledge their humanity in this way. Since 2013, in September 2013, the three of us have been co-directors of the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children, which is a solemn nationwide prayer vigil that takes place typically on the second Saturday of September every year. This year it's a little different because we didn't want to crash into the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which is its own solemn anniversary and deserves to be recognized on its own. So we've moved this to the date of September 18th this year, which means we are just 10 days out from the Day of Remembrance. And we thought we would join you at this time to talk about the inspiration for this event, why it's so important that we do a thing like this, and how you can take part in the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children this year and on into the future. And we have all kinds of different ways that you can be a participant in this event. I'm going to check back with our Facebook stream. Okay, we're building up an audience now. That's great. We've been boosting this and promoting this for a couple of days now, and we're thrilled to have people joining us here for this chat. I'd like to start by turning it over to you, Father Frank, to tell us the origin story of this particular event and how the three of us put this together some years ago.
Yes, well, thanks, Eric, for doing this. Thanks, Monica. Great to be with you also again. And thank you all, brothers and sisters that are joining us. I know many of you will be leading events or at least participating in another week or so. And we thank you for your commitment to this. This did arise, as Eric said, through conversations of the three of us who have been collaborating in many other ways over the years. And we all knew something about one another, that we've always been convinced that despite the many complexities that surround the issue of abortion, at its heart and core, it is really the simplest issue in the world. You don't kill babies because babies are one of us. They are human like we are. And you know, the one criterion I've always said, the only criterion really that a person needs to be pro-life is to be alive. The fact that we're alive, we know that life is a good and we need to defend it. And connecting with the humanity of these babies who are being killed or threatened to be killed is really what it's all about. Pro-life activism for so many people began in just that way. They connected with the humanity of the babies. I remember, Eric, your dad always telling the story. Wasn't it seeing the babies in a bucket, in a photo of aborted babies that really sparked his heart and soul in this issue? And so on and on for so many leaders in the movement and for so many grassroots activists connecting with the humanity of the baby. Too many people make this issue way too abstract. And they get into all sorts of nuances and theories and concepts. You know, you can justify anything with words. And we all appreciate the philosophical and the intellectual dimensions of this movement. But really, winning this battle really in very many ways boils down to getting it out of the realm of the abstract, making it concrete, connecting with the humanity of these babies. And part of the humanity of these babies is physical. They have, or we better yet to say, they are bodies as well as souls, just like we are. So the three of us always knew that we thought this way, that we were convinced that we had to show people the pictures of the videos of the victims of abortion, and also that we had to honor their bodies. Just like we honor the bodies of people who die at any age, the babies are no different. And the three of us had been involved at various times in burying the bodies of aborted babies. When you think about the numbers of abortions in America, thousands a day of these children being killed, the bodies are all around us. They're all over the place. And sometimes we come up against these bodies quite by accident, and other times going to where we know they are likely to be, such as the dumpsters at abortion facilities. We go to get those bodies. We have gone to get those bodies. Why? Because, again, they are aspects of the person. They're part of us. This is the human family. So we thought and began to discuss the idea that, look, by this time in our history of abortion in America, there are various places around the country where these aborted babies are buried. And some of these burials we ourselves coordinated or took part in or arranged. And we said, you know, we have to make sure that these are not forgotten places. It's part of making sure the babies themselves are not forgotten, that their burial places are not forgotten. And going to those burial places and praying there and mourning and remembering and honoring in the same way that we would do for people of any age, is a way of doing what I was just saying, connecting with the humanity of the babies. It brings the human person who does this to a level of connection that mere words cannot accomplish, or even watching, reading brochures or watching videos or listening to sermons. None of that can quite accomplish the connection that happens when you're standing at a grave and an aborted baby is buried there, or in many cases, hundreds or even thousands of aborted babies. And in one case, the largest grave site in Los Angeles, 16,500 babies buried in one place. Brothers and sisters, Eric and Monica and I decided that we would launch a National Day of Remembrance, whereby we would invite people, urge people, help organize people to come to these grave sites simultaneously. And that's the response that has happened to this day is precisely what we expected and foresaw, because we know the power of connecting with the humanity of the babies in this way. People have just told us numerous stories of how it has moved them, how it has inspired them. I always say pro-life activism begins with a broken heart. If our hearts are broken, if we weep, if we can weep for these babies, and if we can feel that sense of mourning, like we would feel again for any person who we care about who has died, then we're going to be motivated and we're going to be strengthened to do what it takes to speak up for these children and ultimately to protect them. So it has happened, it has been launched, and of course it has grown in such a way that the memorial services that'll take place on the 18th are not just at the places where the babies are buried, but also at other memorial sites where there are special monuments and stones, many of which I've been privileged to bless in the course of my travels around the country. Some are in cemeteries, some are at Knights of Columbus Hall, some are on the property of parish churches and so forth. We're inviting people to go to those sites as well. And take some time of prayer and remembrance and rededication. That, in a nutshell, is what this day is about. It's a beautiful spiritual experience. It's a spiritual and human encounter with these children. And friends, it's a day of hope. It's a day of great hope because, again, as applies to anyone who has died at any age, St. Paul says to the Thessalonians, when he's talking about the resurrection and Jesus is going to come back and the dead will be raised, he said, don't grieve like those who have no hope. Some people grieve because they think they're never going to see their loved one again. We grieve because we love. We grieve because we are sad that these babies have died, but we grieve with hope. We grieve with hope. We know that death doesn't have the last word. So this day of grieving, this day of remembrance, this day of mourning, this day of standing by the gravesite is also a day of renewing our hope, not only for these babies, but for the end of abortion in America and throughout the world. So Eric and Monica, it's just so great to partner with you on this project. And again, all of you friends that are going to participate in this, it's so great to be side by side with you, joining hands and minds and hearts on this very, very special and important day in our pro-life year. Thank you. And Eric, we'll bring it back to you.
All righty. Thank you for that introduction to where this project comes from and some of the kind of spiritual inspiration for it, the worldview that really forms how we go about visiting these burial places and talking about these children. I want to shout out to a couple of folks who have joined us on Facebook and have commented. Thanks to Rebecca, who's praying out in Maine for us. Diane in Virginia, Lee from California, Kim from Florida, Charles from Chicago area, Mark in Texas have all reached out. I'd like to invite people who are watching on Facebook to, if you've been to a National Day of Remembrance prayer service in the past, maybe you could share a few words about your experience in the chat, and we could in turn share those over the broadcast. Or if you have any questions for us about the Day of Remembrance, about what goes on at these services, where you can find out more, we should say right from the top, if you visit nationaldayofremembrance.org, I'm going to ask our tech Matt to put that link into the chat for this video on the various channels where it is. We're broadcasting on several different channels here to reach an audience. We'll put the link to that website in where you can find the locations where this memorial service will be taking place on September 18th. We also, it's only 10 days away, but that's still enough time to come on board as a local leader. We've had several inquiries just today of people who want to get involved with this and be part of it. We always tell people it can be as complex or as simple as you want. You can simply gather with some of your pro-life friends at a memorial site. Perhaps there's one at your own parish, right around the corner from the church, you know, on the parish grounds where there's a memorial. There's one at my parish down the end of my block. To pray a rosary and you know, in concert with everyone else around the country. Or it can be as complex as getting a sound system and putting together a printed program and inviting the local bishop to speak. We've had tremendous participation by bishops all over the country over the years. Dozens and dozens of bishops have participated in this, including the late Cardinal Francis George, who came to the first Day of Remembrance in 2013. He came every year during his life to that memorial service, which is especially fitting because those children were buried by his predecessor, Cardinal Bernardine. Joseph Bernardine buried those babies. We are still waiting for Cardinal Supich to join us at the Day of Remembrance. We've invited him. We hope that he will come and join us one day. Out there too, to continue that string of Chicago archbishops who have been intimately involved with this particular burial at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside, Illinois. So it's really up to you how complex you want to make it. There's still plenty of time to get the word out. And we have a host of resources for you. We have email templates. You just fill in your information and send it to your email list of pro-life friends. We have Facebook event templates with the graphics and the language that you need to create a Facebook event, like the one for this live stream that you would have seen, so that you can invite people that way. We have public service announcement templates, bulletin announcement templates. We have instructions on how to put together a program. What kinds of things do you say? Who can you invite to speak? You can simply pray. You can have a choral group come. So many things you can do. And I really, if you're thinking at all about doing it this year, I really encourage you to do it. Do it simple and just as basic as you can this year to, you know, accommodate the fact that you only have 10 days, but with a view to next year, making it a little bigger. And that's the way a lot of our leaders go. They start out real simple. I'm just getting together with a few friends and we're going to pray at this memorial at our church. In a few years, they've moved to a local grave site. They've got the bishop coming. They've ramped it up. So you can scale this out as time goes by and make it more and more you know, rich for the people who are coming to participate. again, if you've got any questions about getting involved or really anything to do with the pro-life movement right now, there's so many issues in the news right now. I'm sure you've got some questions about those. The three of us are really, got our finger on the pro-life pulse, and we'd be happy to offer some commentary and offer our insights on anything at all in the pro-life world. Now I'd like to hand it over to Monica Miglierino Miller, whose book Abandoned, a wonderful, wonderful pro-life book, tells the story of some of these burials and some of these recoveries of bodies that were buried all around the country, and is in some sense the sort of pioneer of this particular type of act of mercy, right, for the unborn child. Monica?
Yeah, thank you. Let me also say, if somebody wants to plan a memorial service, sign up on the website. Just go to locations, and then you can sign up for. It'll take 30 seconds to sign up, and then people, when they look at the website, they'll see that there's a service in their own town somewhere, by the church or a cemetery or wherever. So you can sign up as a leader on the website. The burials of the aborted unborn is something that I have a lot of. I have had, oddly, a lot of experience with this act of charity. We chose, and why did we choose the second Saturday of September, even though we moved it one week back because of 9/11 this year? But in the second Saturday of September in the year 1988, we buried 1,200 aborted babies at Holy Cross Cemetery in Milwaukee. And those babies, and I do, as Eric has already noted, I talk about this in my book, Abandoned, the Untold Story of the Abortion Wars. But in 1988, and it was because of your father, Eric, long story short, but we found out that a pathology lab in Northbrook, Illinois, was setting boxes of aborted babies out on their loading dock. They were being put out there for medical waste incineration, basically being treated like trash. And so our group, Citizens for a Pro-Life Society and the Pro-Life Action League, we teamed up together to go to that loading dock, retrieve those boxes. And this mission began in February of 1988, and it ended in October of that year. And we accumulated 5,000 bodies in that time. And the bodies, the babies, ranging in age from approximately 6 weeks to 7 months, they were coming from abortion clinics all over the United States. They were being shipped there primarily from basically a franchise that was run by a woman named Susan Hill, which, by the way, Eric, your father had a lot of interaction with her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Because of the NOW versus Scheidler case, she was the plaintiff. They were the WHO clinics, Women's Health Organization clinics that she ran, and there were a couple of other clinics that were not part of her organization. But how do we know? How do we know where the bodies were coming from? Because the boxes that were set out on the loading dock had the return labels of the abortion clinics, and I still have. I've never thrown them out. I still have several of those boxes. To me, they're like a relic. I can't just throw them out. And we made a decision in 1988 that as far as we could, we would actually return the bodies back to pro-lifers in the various cities where these aborted babies were killed. So Raleigh, North Carolina, Wilmington, Delaware, Fargo, North Dakota, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Chicago, Milwaukee, and a bunch of other, Newark, New Jersey, and so on. And that created automatically a proliferation of grave sites all over the United States as a consequence of that.
Monica, why was it so important in your mind to return these children to the places where they've been aborted?
Well, in some ways, I think we wanted to give the local pro-lifers the opportunity to bury their dead. Some of these pro-lifers were outside of these abortion clinics, maybe on the very day that these babies were killed. We know that as a fact, and I do talk about that in my book. June 16th, we were outside of the Metropolitan Medical Services in Milwaukee, and we went, and that was one of the clinics that was shipping their bodies to VitalMed, the pathology lab, and the bags, okay, that contained the broken, crushed bodies of these aborted babies actually would have the dates. Actually, we got a lot of information: gestational age, the date of the abortion, the mother's names were on the bags, and often the abortionist's name also on the bag. So we retrieved back babies that were killed on June 16th, because the date from the Metropolitan Medical Services abortion clinic, the date was on the bag. So we knew that we had tried to save those babies that wound up being aborted. So to give the local pro-lifers the opportunity to honor and to respect the victims, that's basically one of the ways that there's been, as they say, a multiplication of graves across the United States. Let me mention before I forget that the most recent find of an aborted baby in the trash was on June 7th this year. 15 to 16 week D&E abortion at the Northeast Ohio Women's Clinic in Cuyahoga Falls. And this was just 3 days after a Red Rose rescue had taken place at that abortion center. That baby is going to be buried on September 25th at Holy Cross Cemetery in Akron at 1 o'clock. So anybody listening to this live stream can come. I mean, it's open. It's a funeral for that baby. And again, that's on September 25th at Holy Cross Cemetery in Akron, Ohio at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I do plan to be there, God willing.
It's been a strange part of this project of mourning for these children and recognizing their burial places and marking this annual event to participate in additional burials, additional discoveries. I think perhaps the most historically significant was last year. I believe it was February, wasn't it? Or was it March? In South Bend, the three of us were there for the burial of the victims of Ulrich Klopfer. I believe it was 4,211.
No, it's 2,000 something.
2,411 maybe. I've got my digits mixed up, which is just part of it. The horror of this whole thing is you can get the numbers wrong. We're talking about human beings here. Whether it was 4,000 or 2,000, that's thousands of people. I guess I'm a little bit ashamed of myself for not having that figure at the top of my mind as it was last year, but
I think it's 2,411.
I think that's right. And there was a second group of them that were discovered in the trunk of a car. So the numbers
his Mercedes in a parking lot that he owned.
Very strange. But we were all three of us were there for that. We weren't there for the burial itself, which is done kind of quietly by the state of Indiana, but there was a memorial service there, and we spoke at it along with
attended by the Attorney General.
Right.
His name escapes me.
Curtis Hill.
Curtis Hill. Right. He spoke at it.
Yeah, he worked very hard on that case and was a real champion for us at that time. And that was right before coronavirus. So it seems like it was ages and ages ago, and also like it was yesterday in this weird COVID time warp.
I think the discovery occurred soon after Klopfer died, and he had a house.
Yes.
In Illinois,
Yeah.
I can't remember the name.
Unincorporated Illinois.
What was it for the town? It'll come to me, but it's right basically on the border of
very close
Illinois and Indiana. And
and the story broke like the day before the Day of Remembrance. I remember I was
correct, exactly right.
I was at a comedy review. I was at an improv show when the text, my phone started to just explode with text about this story coming out.
His relatives were going through his belongings after he died, and they found the remains of these aborted babies stockpiled in his garage. So why Klopfer was stockpiling? He didn't want to pay for the biohazard a truck to come and pick them up. They were trophies. It was enormously bizarre and shocking.
Yeah,
especially for his relatives, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's strange because they were all very old, almost 20 years old.
They were almost, yes, correct. They were not recent abortions. That's
it
correct.
Really slotted in. I remember at the memorial services that year, because it was just a day or two after, talking about, and we didn't know yet at that time how old the children were. It wasn't until later that we found out these are kids, and just it really puts an underscore to the horror of abortion when you think these are kids who would have been graduating from high school that year. They'd have been maybe preparing for their first year of college or
right.
their first year of college, right in that area. I have children around that age, and to think of, if only it had let this kid be born, he would now be graduating from high school. She would now be, maybe winning state championship in the gymnastics or shoplifting. Who cares? I would rather have a 18-year-old shoplifting alive than snuffed out pre-birth and buried in the.
Let me mention, Eric, our listeners, our audience might be interested in the video. It's only 5 minutes. Requiem for the Disappeared. Father Frank is heavily featured in it, which chronicles some of the burials that we did. So if you go to YouTube, and maybe Matt could actually put the link up, but Requiem for the Disappeared. It's a music video. In fact, we created an original song for that. Tell Me Who I Am is the name of the song. I love that video, and it's very moving. But it chronicles the burials that we did, Father Frank and I did in the year 2008. Here in Michigan, and then in Florida at the shrine in Hansville. So Requiem for the Disappeared. I hope people take a look at it.
Monica, I don't think we linked to that on the website yet, but that's something we'll do after this live chat. Go ahead and find a place for that to live on the new. We have a brand new website for the National Day of Remembrance this year. It's mobile ready. So, which was always a problem in the past few years, as more and more people were getting on mobile phones. So it's a really fantastic resource for this event, both for volunteers who want to just come out and be part of it, and for our leaders. We have a whole leadership section with all the resources I was referring to earlier in our chat. We've really seen a tremendous amount of growth in this event over the years, and I think that points to the need for an event like this. Our very first Day of Remembrance in 2013, we had 104 sites, and we continued to grow and grow and grow. We had a tiny little dip of we lost about 3 sites in 2018 because there was a big hurricane in the Gulf Coast. And so a whole bunch of those memorial services just had to be canceled because it wasn't safe. And we continued to grow. We topped 200 sites in 2019. We went down just a tiny bit last year with the pandemic, which you'd expect. I was actually really pleased at how many services we did have. I thought the impact of the pandemic would be worse than it was. I think because it's an outdoor event in almost every case, that was able to go forward safely. We have 187 locations currently on the map. The new website literally has a map on it that you can click and go to your state, go to your town, and find the nearest memorial service. I should note that we do not have an exhaustive list of all the memorial sites. We do know all the burial places, we believe. Every so often we learn about a new one. It's about 55 or 56 burial places, but there are hundreds and hundreds of memorial sites. The ones we have listed on our website at nationaldayofremembrance.org are those that other people, pro-lifers like you who are watching, have told us about. So if you know that, oh, our church has one of those memorials, why is it on the list? Because we haven't been told about it by you. So tell us about it, and we'll put it on the list, and we can continue to grow this project. And we also encourage people to go out to these burial places at other times into these memorials, not just during the National Day of Remembrance. We have prayers that you can bring with you, to go out and remember these children in that special way that Father Frank pointed to, this urgency of having our hearts broken for these children, because somebody has to, right? Somebody has to have their hearts broken for these children. And that somebody is us, isn't it? That's why we're here on this chat. That's why we care about this project. Again, if you have any questions or comments, if you've been to a Day of Remembrance and want to share your experience, feel free to chat in any of the channels where this video is showing up. Or if you have any other questions about the pro-life movement right now, maybe I will raise one issue I'm sure is on people's minds. What is going on in the state of Texas? Father, can you give us your thoughts on this really novel approach to abortion policy in the state of Texas?
Yes, well, it reflects really the urgency that so many people feel to protect the unborn. The courts have been pressing down on the states for decades. You can't protect the babies. You can't protect the babies. And we've seen over recent years more and more states being more bold and saying, no, we're going to protect the babies. We're going to push the courts to the limit, and we're going to challenge them and let them challenge us, but we're going to challenge them back so that we can change these court decisions. And, states would pass bans on abortion earlier and earlier. We call them protective laws rather than restrictive laws. And the courts would strike down a lot of these laws. But this time, Texas used a different enforcement mechanism because, the court can't erase a law or take it off the books. All they can do is stop the enforcement of it, and they have to order state officials who are charged with enforcing the laws not to do so. But these legislators in Texas said, we're going to do it differently. We're not going to have the state officials responsible for enforcing the law. We're going to allow private citizens to enforce it via individual lawsuits that they could bring against people who break this law. And that has left the courts, even the Supreme Court, kind of scratching their heads and saying, well, how would we rule against this? We're not quite sure. So we're in a stage now where, thanks to that novel approach, the courts have not been able to enjoin this law. So it did, in fact, go into effect. What does this law do? It protects babies from when a heartbeat can be detected. Now, people are saying, well, that means 6 weeks. Actually, what the law says is whenever the heartbeat is detected, this baby has to be protected. And that we know the heart starts beating approximately 21 days after fertilization. And so what that means in terms of the age of the baby, 3 weeks is the way many pregnancies are measured from the last menstrual period is actually 5 weeks. So if you can start to detect it, a few days later, that's why you're approaching the 6 week mark, which is actually 4 weeks in terms of the actual development of the baby. Texas is saying, look, you can hear a heartbeat, you got to protect that baby by law. And so this has got the whole pro-life movement, of course, cheering, for this victory. And it's got the left going nuts. So they go nuts anyway, it doesn't take much, but they're going nuts over this, and it's a good step forward.
Yeah, it's been a real learning experience for me in the law. I didn't really realize that when a court enjoins a law, they're not really enjoining the law, because the courts can only enjoin a person. to take action or not take action. So
Right.
there's no person here. There's no attorney general or whatever until someone is actually trying to bring one of these civil suits. There can't even be a motion to dismiss, but there won't be a civil suit until there's an abortion in Texas somebody suspects. So it's in a funny way, the abortion industry has kind of been maneuvered into participating in this whole law by going along with it and not just saying this is a bogus law. We're gonna, because how can they do that to the people who are showing up at the abortion
Right.
facility? You know,
Right.
the woman can't be sued. The woman can't be penalized, which is an interesting part of it.
Well, and
Well, boyfriend?
another thing that needs to be really promoted is, if I'm not mistaken, the state of Texas has reserved millions of dollars. I even thought it was 100 million
It is.
to fund pregnancy help centers.
Mhm.
So there is a responsibility that the state of Texas is taking on to help moms who feel that they are having difficulty, continuing with the pregnancy for whatever reason. And that's amazing. And of course, that's something the other side, doesn't say much about, because it doesn't help their narrative. But that's incredibly important. Ban abortion, absolutely, but on the other hand, you have to help the moms. So.
And that's been very much overlooked by the media, hasn't it been?
Mm.
That's been frustrating to see, but it also is historically significant because we've kind of come full circle here. There were laws being passed when Roe v. Wade was handed down, laws that had just been enacted or about to be enacted by state legislators around the country to ban abortion and provide a tremendous amount of pregnancy assistance. I think Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken, it was either Oklahoma or North Dakota, had passed a measure like this, which both banned abortion very clearly, but also set up a whole, regime of assistance to mothers. The pro-life movement has always put its money where its mouth is. The pro-life movement has always cared about children once they're born, contrary to the propaganda, the baseless propaganda that they continually throw at us. And here we see it again. Texas is putting forward $100 million to help women to say yes to life, choose life for their babies, because so many of them are making that choice only because of coercion, financial coercion from boyfriends or from the family. And if we can unplug some of that and make it possible for them to choose life, it's a whole different story. We want to shout out to Jean, who's just informed us she's attending a memorial service in Morris County, New Jersey. Hey, you New Jersey folks, looks like President Biden is coming to visit your state next week as well, I think on Tuesday. So we'll be watching his calendar, and there may be an opportunity to go and protest him. We don't want him to be able to travel anywhere in the United States without pro-life people showing up to remind him that unborn children are little guys too, who need the protection of politicians like him, who claim to be pro-life in their private, in a closet in the basement. But no,
Yeah.
sorry, Monica.
The Catholic.
Hey, the Catholic pro-lifer who's doing everything he can to advance abortion. It's hard to get your head around that one. And we've also got the big Dobbs versus Jackson case coming up, which may put an end to the question of Texas if they in fact go so far as to overturn Roe versus Wade. I hate to ask anybody to prognosticate on the Supreme Court, especially at this point, but any thoughts about the Dobbs case?
Well, Eric, we the three of us have been in the movement long enough to know that you can never predict what the Supreme Court's going to do. But you can get some clues sometimes. And people should be optimistic in their expectations, but not unrealistic. The way that the court has been handling precedent that they think should be overturned has been interesting. If you look at it in the realm of religious freedom, there's a case, many may be familiar with the Lemon case. And that was the case that basically talked about, excessive entanglement between the state and religion. And it was the case that gave rise to these ridiculous situations where, crosses had to be removed from public property because, oh, it's establishment of religion, which of course it's no such thing, etc. So we've been dealing with this for half a century. But in recent years, I mean, those who follow the courts on religious freedom will notice that the court has been moving away from that. Been moving away from the so-called Lemon test, where you have to look for this excessive entanglement of the state with religion. And essentially, what they've done, Eric, is over the course of several decisions over the period of years, have so weakened that Lemon case that effectively it's no longer in effect. They haven't come out and said, we hereby reverse, the Lemon case. So in other words, pro-life people might want to think in terms of, we're not necessarily going to see some kind of sledgehammer come down. We reverse Roe v. Wade. I mean, they could do that, but more likely what's going to happen is that over a series of decisions, and I would think that this Dobbs case is going to be, one of the biggest ones in this series of decisions, the court is going to say certain things that ultimately, when you put two and two together, is going to lead to the conclusion that Roe is no more. They've already been doing this over the years. For example, in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, they abandoned the trimester framework in Roe v. Wade. And they've been dismantling it and weakening it in one way after another after another. The reason this case will be so big in weakening Roe is that Roe said, you can't protect the babies before viability.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, there's no constitutional basis for that. There's no scientific basis for it. It's just absurd. And I think the court is ready to recognize that it's absurd.
Yeah, I think the issue, the original Roe versus Wade decision, in some respects, opened a door, because right. Blackmun, the author of Roe v. Wade, he, based on what he thought was medical science, which of course was ridiculous even back then, that they placed viability at 28 weeks. That is 7 months. We know that a lot of babies, a lot of unborn babies are able to survive outside the womb with, of course, assistance, okay, the neonatal intensive care and all of that, way before the 28th week. So if viability is, is a fluid, first of all, it's fluid from one individual to the next. It depends on willingness to thrive, lung capacity, weight of the unborn child, and whether you're a boy or a girl, it kind of makes a difference there. So I think that the 15-week marker that is really what is just, is up for the review in this case, they're going to be pushing viability back to 15 weeks, and babies after 15 weeks will be protected in a way that they're not now. So that's one direction I think the court could go in.
I'm tempted to get a little, I'll avoid going too much in the weeds on the legalities here, but there's a fascinating article by Sharif Gurgis about, this is actually the Volokh, I don't know how to pronounce it, conspiracy, Eugene Volokh, who's an attorney, constitutional attorney. If you go to my Facebook page, Eric J. Scheidler, you'll see a link to that, and maybe Matt could even, on the tech side, link to this article. If you really want to get down into the weeds of the legalities of this thing, Gurgis is arguing that there's really no way for the Supreme Court to do anything but overturn Roe versus Wade here, if they're going to be consistent and coherent with the kind of court that they've been, because of the undue burden standard that Casey sets up. It'd be really hard for them to tear that apart and build something else in its place, which would be their own sort of justification for abortion, which they don't seem to be inclined to do. So I guess the point is that it's anybody's guess what will really happen, but the fact that they took this case up means that at least 4 and probably 5 justices are in favor of upholding Mississippi's law somehow or another. Whether they will go activist court and create their own version of the law, or whether they will simply strike down Roe versus Wade or find something in between, or maybe they'll even uphold this law, which would be a devastating blow. I think it would turn a lot of us in the pro-life movement away from ever thinking about the Supreme Court as a strategy we could pursue anymore. I hate to be prognosticating too much on that, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. But on the issue of the beginning of life, I thought it would be worthwhile to look at this book. This is the Life in the Making. Look at that name by Ellen Frank Guttmacher. Guttmacher was the first president of Planned Parenthood after Margaret Sanger. I think he took over in the early 70s. This book was published in 1933. Not a couple of years before Roe v. Wade, but a full 40 years before Roe versus Wade. And here is what Guttmacher had to say. This is on page 3 of this book, chapter 1. We of today know that man is born of a sexual union, that he starts life as an embryo within the body of the female, that the embryo is formed from the fusion of 2 single cells, the ovum and the sperm. And here's what he goes on to say. This all seems so simple and evident to us that it is difficult to picture a time when it was not part of common knowledge. 1933. Somehow, 40 years later, the Supreme Court, the lawyers for the abortion industry, and the media and the public and many of our religious leaders forgot.
Oh yeah, nobody
What
knows.
everybody knew in 1933.
That's what Roe v. Wade. Nobody knows when human life begins.
Here's Joe Biden a few years ago saying, yeah, life into conception, but I don't care because I'm pro-choice Catholic. And then 2 days ago, he says, well, I don't believe that. Who knows what he believes? He believes in Joe Biden and maybe not a whole lot else, but we pray for him. That's the best we can do right now. So it's a strange time. It's a very exciting and interesting time to be in the pro-life movement. And if you're feeling like, I want to be engaged in this, I want to be a part of this, all the people who are asking questions and responding to posts on Facebook and talking about this issue, September 18th is your opportunity to be a part of this movement in a special way. We are setting the stage for the Dobbs versus Jackson case by going out to the places where these children who've been legally aborted in our land are buried, where they are memorialized in hundreds of places around the country. And we are shouting out to the world, these are our brothers and sisters here on the ground. Their lives matter to God, and so they matter to us. And this Holocaust, this slaughter of the innocent must end. That's our message. We are speaking out to the humanity of these children at an extremely critical time in the history of the pro-life movement in the United States. That's what you get to be a part of on September 8th, when you go to nationaldayofremembrance.org and find a prayer service near you, or failing to find one nearby, you sign up to lead one at the memorial closest to you, or maybe even to set up a temporary memorial. Some people have done that with crosses on the church lawn. They set up a temporary memorial for this day, and then plan with their pastor to put up a permanent memorial. Get the Knights of Columbus involved to put something up permanently. Many memorials have been inspired and built up because of this project. So those are some of the ways you can be involved in this movement in this critical year for the pro-life movement. Father Frank, Monica, anything to add before we say goodbye to our audience on Facebook and get back to work preparing for this event?
Well, maybe people might want to take a look at a website that we have that's dedicated to abortion victim photography and videos. Father Frank has many galleries at priestsforlife.org, but it's imagesofabortion.com. And when you're looking at those photos that we have at imagesofabortion.com, those are the babies that we buried. And you can actually engage with the real victim. And anybody, we don't charge anyone to use those photos. Nobody really even has to ask our permission. They're publicly available. And also, as I said, Father Frank has a number of galleries. Some of those are our photos on his website as well. So those are all babies that we buried. Every single one of them that we photographed, we buried. So.
Yes, thanks for mentioning that, Monica. Yeah, we have a site called lookatabortion.org. And similar kind of thing to what you just said, many of your pictures and other photos as well. But friends, another final thought about this beautiful day coming up. We're giving honor to babies and their bodies who were dishonored by the abortion industry. And the difference is they dishonored them in the darkness. They killed them in secret. We are honoring them in the broad light of day. We want this to be as public as possible. We want you to invite media to come to show the whole community these services, because it's reparation. It's making up for, in some way, the evil that was done behind closed doors, the secrecy, the darkness of the abortion clinic. No, we want the sun to shine. We want people to see who these babies are and where they are, and that we are sorry that they have died. Who were the ones who were killed in darkness, we are honoring in the light. And that's what we do when we show these babies, whether at these services or like Monica just said, with the pictures and the videos. It's amazing to me, the twisted mindset of those who will say that when we show these babies, or we retrieve these babies, or whatever we do as we bury these babies, that somehow we're dishonoring them. We've all had people say that to us. And it's like, nothing could be more absurd. We're precisely the ones who are giving them honor, paying them respect. So let's continue that beautiful process of making up in some small way that we're able to do for the dishonor and the scandal and the disrespect that the abortion industry shows to these children. It's a consoling thing to take part in the Day of Remembrance. It's a consoling thing because, again, we're feeling like there is something we can do. We couldn't prevent these particular deaths, but now we can still stand with them and honor them. And I look forward to doing it together with all of you this coming September 18th.
Well, with that, let's bring our live chat to a close. I think, Father, that's a great way to underline the significance of this event. We are making reparation in some small way for what was done unjustly and so violently to these children. And we know that God can work miracles with our small gifts. Think of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. If that little boy hadn't been generous with his tiny little fish and loaves supply, well, there was nothing there for Jesus to multiply. The tiniest thing can be multiplied. Our presence out there at these memorial places, at these burial sites on September 18th is our gift to God, and we leave it to him to do what he will with that gift. And it's a gift to those children too, to acknowledge their humanity. So come out and be a part of this effort on September 18th, whether you're participating by going to a site or whether you're going to sign up to be a leader. I think we have some of the leaders on the broadcast with us today. Thank you for your leadership and stepping forward to be a part of this. I want to thank Father Frank, and I want to thank Dr. Miller for joining us for this live chat, and all of you who've tuned in over the course of this past 50 minutes or so. We look forward to working with you again and seeing you again on social media and out on the front lines of this movement. Again, visit nationaldayofremembrance.org to find locations and find how you can get involved more deeply with this event. God bless you for watching, and we'll see you on September 18th. Take care now. Goodbye, everybody.